The day I lost my job at Langston and Pierce. Consulting my sister Olivia called to mock me. It wasn't surprising she'd spent the last 15 years measuring her worth against my supposed failures, using me as her cautionary tale at every family gathering. Seriously, Charlotte fired again. Her voice dripped with familiar contempt. What is this, the third time in 2 years? I held the phone away from my ear, staring out the window of my penthouse office in downtown Chicago. 50 stories up the city sprawled beneath me like a glittering chessboard, every light a piece waiting to be moved. Actually, Olivia, I resigned, I said coolly. She laughed sharp and dismissive. Right, because people totally resign from six-figure consulting jobs in this economy. God, you're pathetic. You can't even admit when you fail. Her unspoken words were louder than her laughter, if only she knew. The job at Langston and Pierce had been nothing more than a convenient facade, an elaborate mask to keep my family thinking I was just another drifting corporate pawn, all while I built something far more formidable in the shadows. Whatever helps you sleep at night, I said mildly, my reflection smirking back at me in the tinted glass. At 34, I looked younger than my years. In my tailored navy suit, no one, not even my closest colleagues, would guess I controlled a multi-billion-dollar investment empire, and that's exactly how I wanted it. Still, as I lowered the phone, another notification blinked on the screen, a text from Mom. Don't worry, honey. Maybe now you'll focus on settling down. Look at Olivia, engaged. Such a blessing. Maybe it's your turn next. I let the phone fall onto my desk with a soft thud. Another gentle reminder from my mother that no matter how high I climbed in secret in her eyes, my worth would always hinge on a ring and a man, as if the universe wasn't already cruel enough. Olivia continued oblivious to the simmering rage she was stoking. Well, don't expect any sympathy at my engagement party next month, she said, the words sticky sweet with malice. I won't have you embarrassing me in front of Daniel's family. They're actually successful, unlike some people. Ah, yes, Daniel Whitmore. Olivia's golden boy fiancé, rising star at Havenbridge Capital Management. The irony almost made me laugh and vomit at the same time. What Olivia never knew was that Daniel had once been more than just a name to me years ago back in college. Daniel was the one person who made me believe briefly, foolishly, that someone might see past the invisible walls my family had built around me. He was kind, driven, brilliant. I had loved him from afar, guarding my feelings like fragile glass. Of course, Olivia had swooped in, unknowing, unchallenged, and ultimately victorious, another quiet loss I had swallowed without a sound. I wouldn't dream of embarrassing you, I said softly. Good. And dress properly for once. Okay, she continued, twisting the knife with practiced precision. No more of your bargain bin suits. Daniel's father is bringing the CEO of Havenbridge. Try not to look like the family failure. I glanced down at my Brioni suit, the one that cost more than Olivia's designer handbag collection combined. I'll do my best, I said dryly. After she hung up, I sat in silence, the city's heartbeat pulsing through the glass. 15 years. 15 years of carefully woven misdirection. I had let them believe I was struggling. Let them laugh, pity, dismiss, all while building something they couldn't even comprehend. It had started back in college, the same time Daniel had unknowingly captured my heart, when I developed the predictive market algorithm that changed my life. While Olivia partied her way through business school, I was quietly raising capital, forging alliances, constructing an empire in the shadows. By 25, I had my first billion. By 30, I had acquired Havenbridge Capital through a labyrinth of shell companies and blind trusts. Even the board didn't know who the elusive owner was. All they knew was that their unseen chairman delivered relentless, unprecedented results. The day-to-day consulting jobs were merely camouflage. No expectations, no demands, no favors asked or owed. But now, watching the golden sun bleed out across the skyline from my private office, I wondered if it was time for the truth to finally cut through the lies. Olivia's engagement party would be the perfect stage. Daniel, the once dream now puppet, reported directly to me, though he had never met the reclusive Ms. Hayes in person. Almost poetically fitting. My phone buzzed again, vibrating across the marble desk. I answered without looking. Sir, ma'am, it's Daniel, he said nervously. I almost smiled. I just found out my fiancé, she's your sister. Indeed she is, I said smoothly. Silence. Then almost whispering, I had no idea, ma'am. She talks about you sometimes, but she doesn't seem to know. That's because she doesn't know, I said evenly, no one in my family does. And I'd like to keep it that way until the engagement party. Daniel swallowed audibly. Of course, ma'am. Should I act like I don't know when I see you there? I thought about Olivia's sneers, her self-congratulating smirks, her endless need to shine brighter by pushing me into the shadows. Just act natural, Daniel, I said. I'm sure it'll be quite an evening. After hanging up, I stood by the window watching the city's lights flicker on, one by one below me, like pieces on an elaborate board, waiting for the first move, waiting for the fall. In the weeks that followed, I watched from a calculated distance as Olivia orchestrated her grand engagement party, each detail more extravagant than the last. Every few days, Mom called with breathless updates, each one laced with familiar disappointment. You know, your sister's fiancé is very successful, she said during one call, her voice pointed. Maybe Daniel could help you find something stable. It's time you had something to be proud of, Charlotte. I nearly laughed out loud. The irony was almost too rich. Daniel's promising career, and by extension, his reputation, existed entirely at my discretion, but instead, I simply said, I'll keep that in mind, with the same practiced neutrality I had perfected over years of swallowing indignities. The morning of the engagement party dawned clear and sharp, the Chicago skyline etched in brilliant blue against the autumn air. Standing before my walk-in closet, I considered my options carefully, finally settling on a bespoke Brioni suit in deep midnight. If I was going to bring down the house of cards Olivia had so painstakingly built, I might as well dress for the occasion. As I adjusted my Patek Philippe watch, an heirloom piece that could have easily bought and sold Olivia's entire wardrobe, I allowed myself a rare smile. Tonight the lies would crumble. Tonight I would no longer be the family's invisible failure. And if a small part of me mourned the loss of anonymity, it was quickly buried beneath the sharp thrill of vindication. I arrived at the venue, a private rooftop garden atop a luxury hotel in Chicago's Gold Coast. Precisely on time, Olivia was stationed near the entrance, draped in a shimmering designer gown, surrounded by her carefully curated circle of admirers. Daniel stood stiffly by her side, looking like he would rather be anywhere else. Oh, look who actually showed up, Olivia trilled as I approached. Her voice carried across the marble floor. And wearing something from Bargain Basement again, how appropriate. Several of her friends tittered behind manicured hands. Daniel shot me a glance, half pleading, half mortified. Congratulations, Olivia, I said smoothly, ignoring the bait. And Daniel, I added, inclining my head toward my employee, who struggled to meet my gaze. Olivia wasn't done. Still unemployed, are we? She pressed loudly, clearly relishing the chance to parade my perceived failures in front of her glittering audience. I heard Langston and Pierce finally got tired of carrying dead weight, she continued with a theatrical sigh, shaking her head for dramatic effect. I smiled thinly, noting the growing number of spectators now turning their attention our way. Among them, I spotted several Havenbridge Capital executives, people who knew exactly who I was watching with barely concealed fascination. Something like that, I replied mildly. Poor Charlotte, Olivia declared, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. Not everyone can be a success like Daniel. And that's when it happened. From the corner of my eye, I saw Eleanor Grant, chairwoman of Havenbridge's board, making her way through the crowd, eyes locked on me with a warm, respectful smile reserved for trusted equals. Daniel saw her too, and panic bloomed across his face. Chairwoman Hayes, he blurted out, voice cracking. I didn't know you were... The words hung heavy in the air. Olivia's champagne glass slipped from her manicured fingers, shattering against the marble floor with a piercing crash. Conversation around us died instantly. The silence was absolute. The silence that followed felt eternal. I could almost hear the gears grinding in Olivia's perfectly curated mind as she tried and failed to process what she had just heard. Around us, the party guests had frozen mid-movement. Champagne glasses hung suspended halfway to lips, conversations dying mid-sentence. "Chairwoman!" Olivia stammered, her voice cracking her face, draining of its polished glow. What is he talking about, Daniel?" Daniel looked like a man caught between two collapsing worlds. His eyes darted desperately between me and his fiancé, beads of sweat gathering along his hairline. "Olivia, I can explain." "Actually," I said quietly, stepping forward, my voice slicing through the suffocating tension. "I think it's better if I do the explaining." I turned slowly to address the room, sweeping my gaze across the stunned faces, some familiar, others strangers, all of them watching me like I was a ghost materializing from a long-forgotten past. For those who don't know me, I said each word deliberate. "I'm Charlotte Hayes, chairwoman and majority owner of Havenbridge Capital Management." The gasps were immediate, like a synchronized intake of disbelief. I saw my parents in the corner, my father's mouth slack with shock, my mother clutching his arm so tightly, her knuckles had gone white. "That's impossible," Olivia snapped, but even she couldn't find the strength to deliver the words with her usual venom. "You're unemployed. You just got fired from Langston and Pierce." "Resigned," I corrected gently. It was one of several cover jobs I've held over the years. Keeps things interesting. I flicked my eyes toward Daniel, who sagged with visible relief. "You can relax now, Daniel," I added lightly. "I don't plan on firing you just because you're marrying my sister." Olivia's head whipped between us, her designer earrings swinging wildly. "You can't fire him," she cried. "You're lying. This is just another one of your pathetic attempts to—" "Ms. Hayes." Eleanor Grant interjected smoothly, stepping forward with the quiet authority of someone who knew the truth firsthand. "I can assure you, your sister is telling the truth. Charlotte has been our chairwoman for the past 5 years, though this is the first time many of us have had the privilege to meet her in person." I watched as the realization crashed over Olivia, slow and devastating, like an approaching storm. 15 years of smugness, of casual cruelty, of carefully constructed superiority crumbling in a single breath. But Olivia's eyes flitted desperately to our parents. "Did you know about this? Did you?" Mom stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Charlotte, is this true? All this time?" I nodded, offering a small, tight smile. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private," I suggested, gesturing toward a side room just off the main terrace. Jonathan Daniel handled the guests for now, shell-shocked. My family followed me into a private dining suite, leaving behind the scattered ruins of Olivia's perfect night. The moment the door closed behind us, the dam broke. "How is this possible?" Dad blurted, running a hand through his graying hair. "Why didn't you tell us Havenbridge? But that's worth billions." I sank into one of the leather chairs, adjusting my cuffs with deliberate care. "It's actually quite simple," I said. "Remember the algorithm I developed in college? The one you all said was cute." Olivia flinched visibly. Years ago, she had laughed when I showed her my early market models, dismissing them as a fun little hobby, even as she bragged about it to her professors, as if she'd been the one guiding me. "That cute hobby," I continued, "worked better than anyone could have imagined. I used it to start trading, built up capital, made key investments." I paused, letting the words sink in. By 25, I had my first billions. Dad choked on his own breath. "Billion." "Currently, my personal net worth is just over 12 billion, I said quietly. Havenbridge manages approximately 180 billion in assets globally. Mom sank into a chair, her face ashen. Olivia, however, remained standing, barely, her engagement ring glinting mockingly under the chandelier light. "But why the fake job?" she asked hoarsely. "Why let us think you were struggling?" I leaned back, studying her carefully. "Do you remember what you said when I tried to show you my first predictive models?" Her face tightened. "You told me it was adorable, that I thought I could ever compete with real business people, that someone like me, someone like Charlotte Hayes, would never amount to anything without a husband to stabilize her." I tilted my head slightly, as if contemplating a specimen under glass. 15 years ago, I continued, I decided to build everything in secret, no pressure, no expectations, no family interference. I let that settle before adding my voice sharper. No one trying to take credit for my work. Olivia paled. "Oh, yes," I said smoothly. "Did you think I didn't notice all those times you bragged about my science awards in high school, telling people you mentored me into winning them, or when you presented my college internship as proof of your own networking prowess at business mixers?" Her mouth opened and closed without a sound. "You were so busy shaping the narrative of being the guiding sister that you forgot the truth." I said, voice low. "You weren't guiding me. You were standing on my shoulders." Olivia stumbled back into a chair, her posture crumbling. Dad tried to interject some weak defense forming, but I cut him off with a raised hand. "And let's not pretend the rest of you were innocent," I said, glancing at both of them. "You leaned on Olivia's success to mask your disappointment in me. You made jokes at my expense, used me as a cautionary tale while never once wondering what else might be happening." The shame was palpable, thick and heavy in the air. "But we tried to help you," Mom said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "The job referrals, the advice, the constant criticism," I added sharply, "the endless comparisons to Olivia." I leaned forward, my hands steepled on the table. "Tell me, would you have been proud if I stayed the failure you thought I was?" No one answered. They didn't need to. Olivia bowed her head. Her confidence shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. "Oh, God," she whispered, tears gathering in her perfectly lined eyes. "All those things I said to you about being a failure, about not measuring up." While I was signing your fiancé's paychecks, I finished for her, my voice flat. "Ironic, isn't it?" A soft knock interrupted the heavy silence. Daniel poked his head in, looking thoroughly miserable. "Ms. Hayes, some of the board members are asking for you." I rose smoothly to my feet. "We should rejoin the party," I said, smoothing my jacket. "There's still an engagement to celebrate after all." At the door I paused, glancing back at Olivia. "Oh, and Olivia," she looked up hollow and broken. "The discount suit you mocked earlier, its Brioni costs more than your car." I didn't wait for a response. I stepped back into the party, leaving behind 15 years of buried hurt and letting the truth finally breathe. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of whispered conversations, sidelong stares, and hastily rearranged allegiances. Executives I had only ever known through conference calls now clustered around me, eager to offer congratulations, admiration, fear. Through it all, Olivia floated like a ghost, her perfect life dismantled thread by thread. Later, as the crowd thinned and the band packed up, Olivia found me at the bar. Her makeup was slightly smeared. Her hand shook as she clutched her empty champagne flute. "Why now?" she asked quietly. "Why reveal everything tonight?" I sipped my scotch, savoring the slow burn. "Because it was time," I said simply. "Because I'm tired of living a lie. And because," I added, meeting her hollow gaze, "the most valuable lessons come at the height of our pride." She flinched but nodded. "I deserve it," she whispered. "Yes," I agreed, "you do." She swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, Charlotte. I know it doesn't make up for everything, but I am truly sorry." For the first time in years, I saw not the polished, perfect Olivia, but the sister I used to love, before ambition and rivalry poisoned everything. "The real question," I said, setting down my glass, "is what happens now?" She looked at me uncertainly. "Now that the truth is out, now that the world you built on my silence has collapsed, what happens next?" Her answer would determine everything: our future, our family, whether we could rebuild or whether we would remain broken beyond repair. The weeks following Olivia's engagement party were a masterclass in chaos theory. One revelation spiraled into dozens of unforeseen consequences, each one more absurd and telling than the last. It took less than 72 hours for the story to leak. The financial press seized it with both hands. The enigmatic chairwoman of Havenbridge Capital, revealing her identity at her sister's engagement party. The Wall Street Journal ran a full-page spread. There we were. Olivia's stunned face, frozen mid-horror. Daniel awkwardly caught beside her, and me standing cool and composed, a glass of champagne in hand, immortalized for the business world to devour. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Family members who had ignored me for years suddenly remembered how close we used to be. Distant cousins pitched me can't-miss business ventures. Old high school acquaintances resurfaced with offers of life-changing partnerships. Even my third-grade teacher somehow dug up my number, reminding me quite forcefully of the special role she played in shaping my work ethic. But it wasn't the external noise that fascinated me most. It was the shifting dynamics within my immediate family that proved to be the real spectacle. My father, ever the pragmatist, pivoted with whiplash-inducing speed. The man who had once looked at me with thinly veiled disappointment now gazed upon me with something approaching reverence. "I always knew you had potential," he said over lunch one afternoon, sitting in his favorite diner, the same booth where he had not 6 months earlier lectured me about financial responsibility. I stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl into the dark brew. "Really?" I said lightly. Because I distinctly remember being called a walking testament to wasted education last Christmas. He had the decency to look embarrassed. "I was wrong," he admitted, clearing his throat. "Obviously very wrong." He hesitated, searching for words. "But you have to understand," he said. "Seeing you jump from job to job, never settling, it looked like failure." "Those jobs were covers, Dad," I said quietly. "Calculated failures. I needed them to keep you all looking the other way while I built something bigger." He looked at me, genuinely puzzled. But why hide it? Why not let us in? I met his gaze steadily. "Because I wanted to succeed or fail on my own merits. No family connections, no expectations, no pressure. Just me, my ideas, and the market. And because you didn't trust us to handle the truth," he added softly. I gestured around the diner, still the same cheap Formica tables, the smell of burnt coffee, the worn vinyl seats patched with duct tape. "Can you blame me?" I asked. "Would we be sitting here having this conversation if you still thought I was a mid-level consultant struggling to keep a job?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Mom took a different approach. Less pride, more guilt. She showed up at my real office one afternoon, somehow charming her way past 3 layers of security. The receptionist looked shell-shocked as she ushered my mother through the glass doors into the top-floor suite. "This is where you've been all along," Mom said, her voice trembling, as she stared out over the Chicago skyline. "While we thought you were struggling." "Mom?" I started, but she held up a hand, silencing me. "No, let me finish." She turned back from the windows, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Do you know how many nights I lay awake worrying about you, wondering if you'd ever find your path, wondering if you were okay?" I said nothing for a moment, my throat tightening. "I was more than okay," I said softly. Her face crumpled slightly. "Yes," she whispered. "You were building an empire in secret, while letting your mother think her daughter was barely getting by." Her voice cracked. "Was it worth it, Charlotte? Was proving your point worth all the pain you caused?" The words hit harder than I expected. For years, I had focused so much on shielding myself, on maintaining my independence, that I had failed to see the emotional cost of my deception to her, to all of them. I swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," I said finally. "Not for building this my way, but for hurting you. That was never my intention." She studied me for a long moment, long enough that I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. Then she nodded slowly. "I suppose," she said, voice steadier now. "I can understand it. After all the times we compared you to Olivia, after all the pushing and criticizing, you wanted to prove yourself without us hovering over you," she finished quietly. "Something like that," I murmured. She squared her shoulders, a familiar steel entering her spine. "Well," she said briskly, wiping at her eyes, "I hope you've proved whatever you needed to prove, because I expect to see my daughter at family dinners from now on." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "The real Charlotte. Not some carefully constructed facade." I smiled a real smile this time. "Yes, Mom." I said the real Charlotte. For the first time in years, it felt like maybe the girl they had once overlooked wasn't invisible anymore. But it was Olivia who surprised me most. A week after the engagement party, she reached out with a simple message: "Coffee, just us." Not the sort of invitation I would have expected from the sister who once only entertained meetings at rooftop lounges and Michelin-starred restaurants. Still curiosity. and perhaps something more compelled me to agree. We met at a tiny coffee shop tucked away on a quiet street near Lincoln Park. No crystal chandeliers, no designer handbags flashing for attention, just chipped mugs the scent of roasted beans and a quiet space too honest for pretense. Olivia sat nervously at a corner table, her latte untouched in front of her. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, tracing the rim of her cup with a trembling finger. "About how I treated you, about why I always felt the need to." She paused, struggling for the words, "to constantly remind you and myself of your failures." She winced as if the confession physically hurt. I stayed silent, letting her fight through it. "I think I was scared," she said finally, voice low. "It wasn't what I expected." "Scared?" I asked, leaning forward slightly. "Of what?" She took a deep breath. "Of not being enough," she admitted. "Of not living up to expectations. Mom and Dad, they always pushed so hard. Success wasn't just a goal, it was oxygen. Somewhere along the line, I decided the only way to breathe was to be better than you." She laughed bitterly, wiping at the corner of her eye. "And all this time," she said, shaking her head, "you were so far ahead of me I couldn't even see it." "Success isn't a competition, Olivia," I said gently. She shot me a wry smile, says the secret billionaire. But there was no malice left in it, only a tired sadness. "God," she whispered, "do you know how stupid I feel? All those years I mocked your career, your clothes, your life, while you could have bought and sold my company 100 times over." "That was never the point," I said quietly. She looked at me, confusion tightening her brow. "Then what was the point?" Charlotte helped me understand. I considered carefully. There was a time when I would have delivered my answer like a blade. But now, after everything, I simply spoke the truth. "Freedom," I said finally. "The freedom to succeed or fail on my own terms. To build something without the weight of family pressure, without the expectation that I had to outshine anyone, including you." Olivia stared at me, the weight of understanding slowly settling into her features. "And now?" she asked after a moment. "Now that everyone knows," I smiled slightly. "Now I do whatever I want," I said, starting with fixing the things I neglected and maybe building something new. The next month proved transformative in ways I hadn't dared hope. I established the Hayes Family Foundation, not as a slush fund for handouts, but as a serious venture capital arm, dedicated to funding entrepreneurial projects within the extended family. Ideas were vetted with the same ruthless precision I brought to Havenbridge. No favorites, no shortcuts. Mom joined the board, surprising everyone with her sharp eye for viable proposals. Dad's small consulting firm, once floundering, secured several major contracts. I arranged them quietly, ensuring he never knew my hand was involved. His work spoke for itself. He just needed a door to open. As for Olivia and Daniel, their wedding plans shifted dramatically. Gone were the extravagant menus, the imported floral arrangements, the endless guest list designed to impress. Instead, Olivia insisted on something smaller, more intimate, something real. "I've had enough of showing off," she told me one afternoon over shared coffee and easy laughter. "Time to focus on what actually matters." Daniel, freed from the pressures of playing a perfect corporate fiancé, threw himself into his work with renewed vigor. Without the looming specter of hidden truths between us, he flourished. The press inevitably moved on to newer scandals. The flood of long-lost relatives slowed to a trickle. Life found a new rhythm, different from before, but somehow more genuine. 6 months after the party, we gathered for our first true family dinner in years. No facades, no pretenses, just family, imperfect, messy, real. As we lingered over dessert, Olivia raised her glass, a mischievous smile playing at her lips. "You know," she said, "I never did thank you properly." I arched an eyebrow. "For what?" "For teaching me the most expensive lesson of my life," she said, laughing softly. "Never judge someone's worth by the suit they're wearing, even if it looks like it's from Men's Warehouse." I laughed too full and free, especially now, especially then. Later that night, standing alone in my office high above Chicago, I gazed out over the city that had unknowingly witnessed my transformation. Years of secrecy, Careful misdirection, calculated failures, all of it painstakingly built just to create something that was truly mine. Had it been worth it? The lies, the hidden victories, the distance it created from the people who once thought they knew me. Looking at where we stood now, Mom and Dad proud, without the sharp edge of judgment. Olivia humbled but somehow freer, Daniel finding his own footing. Our family bond reforged in the fires of truth. I thought maybe it had been. Sometimes the hardest lessons come wrapped in the most unexpected packages. Sometimes success isn't about proving your worth to those who doubted you. It's about proving it to yourself. And sometimes, just sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's growth. I picked up my phone and texted Olivia, "Dinner next week, my treat." Her reply came almost instantly, "Only if you promise to wear something from Men's Warehouse for old time's sake." I smiled, setting the phone down. Some things had changed completely, others just changed form. But this time we were all in on the joke. And that, I realized, made all the difference. In the end, Charlotte didn't just reveal the illusions her family built. She reclaimed the right to define her own worth. No longer living to meet someone else's expectations. No longer carrying the silent weight of comparisons and judgment. She chose a new path. A path of freedom, strength, and self-respect. And you deserve that too. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been made to feel small by the very people who should have lifted you up, please you up. I hope Charlotte's story touched something deep inside you today. What would you do if you had the chance to rewrite your own story? Would you choose forgiveness or freedom? Share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. I read every single story you send. Comment 9 if you're also on the journey of reclaiming your true self. And don't forget to like this video to support healing stories and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another courageous journey. Thank you for being here with me today. And always remember, you deserve to be free. You deserve to live for yourself.